Edward Snowden was a computer expert who worked as a contractor for the National Security Agency, NSA. In 2013, he leaked thousands of top-secret government documents that showed how the U.S. was collecting data on millions of people, both inside the country and around the world. The programs included PRISM, which allowed the government to get user data from big tech companies like Google, Apple, and Facebook, and X-Keyscore, which let analysts search through emails, browsing histories, and chats without a warrant. Snowden found that the NSA was gathering phone records from companies like Verizon, collecting billions of internet records daily, and even listening in on world leaders. One report said the U.S. had monitored the phone of German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Another showed how American programs worked with British intelligence to watch people overseas. At first, Snowden tried to share his concerns through official channels, but when nothing changed, he contacted journalists from The Guardian and The Washington Post and shared the documents. The articles were published in June 2013. After the leaks, Snowden flew from Hawaii to Hong Kong, then to Moscow. His U.S. passport was canceled while he was in Russia, so he could not leave. He was later granted asylum and now lives there with his wife. In 2022, he became a Russian citizen. Because of his actions, Snowden was charged under the Espionage Act, a U.S. law used against people who share national defense information without permission. He faces up to 30 years in prison if he returns. In the years since the leak, U.S. courts ruled that some of the NSA programs were illegal. Congress also passed the USA Freedom Act in 2015, which ended bulk collection of phone records. Snowden's documents are still stored and studied by journalists and researchers today. Julian Assange is an Australian publisher and computer expert. In 2006, he started a website called WikiLeaks, where people could send in secret documents without giving their names. Assange believed that if governments or powerful groups were hiding things from the public, those secrets should be shared, especially if they showed wrongdoing. In 2010, WikiLeaks released hundreds of thousands of classified files from the U.S. military and State Department. These were given to Assange by U.S. Army intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning, next up on our list. The files included the collateral murder video, which shows a U.S. helicopter firing on people in Iraq, including 2 journalists. Other documents detailed unreported civilian casualties in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, as well as private conversations between American diplomats. Some people praised WikiLeaks for bringing these facts to light. Others, including U.S. officials, said the leaks put lives at risk and damaged relationships between countries. The files were published by major newspapers like The New York Times, The Guardian, and Der Spiegel. After the leaks, Assange faced a different legal issue in Sweden, where he was accused of misconduct. He denied the charges but feared that if he went to Sweden, he'd be sent to the U.S. to face charges for the leaks. In 2012, he took refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy in London to avoid arrest. He lived there for almost 7 years. In 2019, British police arrested him after Ecuador withdrew its protection. The U.S. asked for him to be sent there to face charges under the Espionage Act. In 2024, after long court battles, Assange agreed to a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to 1 charge and was allowed to return to Australia. His case raises big questions about freedom of the press, government secrecy, and who gets to decide what the public should know. Chelsea Manning, born Bradley Edward Manning, is a former U.S. Army intelligence analyst who leaked one of the largest set of classified documents in American history. In 2010, while stationed in Iraq, Manning sent over 700,000 military and diplomatic files to the website WikiLeaks. These documents included battlefield reports, diplomatic cables, and videos that had not been seen by the public. In addition to the collateral murder video I mentioned previously, other documents Manning released included the Iraq war dogs, the Afghan war diary, and U.S. embassy cables from around the world. The files revealed civilian casualties that hadn't been reported, poor treatment of prisoners, and private opinions of foreign leaders. Manning said the reason for the leak was because of a strong belief that the public had the right to know what really happened in the wars. In 2010, Manning was arrested and held in military custody. Manning was later convicted under the Espionage Act and sentenced to 35 years in prison, the longest sentence ever given to a U.S. leaker at that time. Manning's treatment in prison, including being held alone for long periods, was criticized by human rights groups. In 2017, after serving 7 years, Manning's sentence was commuted by President Barack Obama. Manning later ran for the U.S. Senate in Maryland, but only received 5.8% of the vote. While some people saw Manning as a whistleblower who exposed hidden truths, others were more on the side that the acts endangered national security. Manning's case remains one of the most well-known and debated examples of military whistleblowing. Daniel Ellsberg was a military analyst and former U.S. government employee who leaked a top-secret report called the Pentagon Papers in 1971. These documents showed that the U.S. government had been dishonest with the public about the Vietnam War for years. The report was over 7,000 pages long and covered U.S. actions in Vietnam from the 1940s to the late 1960s. Ellsberg had helped write the study while working for the RAND Corporation, a research group that advised the U.S. military. When he read the full report, he realized that leaders from both political parties had misled the public about why the U.S. was in war, how it was going, and whether they believed it could be won. Believing the truth needed to be known, Ellsberg secretly photocopied the report and gave it to the New York Times. On June 13, 1971, the paper began publishing stories based on the Pentagon Papers. The Nixon administration tried to stop the publication, but the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in favor of the newspapers. Soon after, Ellsberg was charged in the Espionage Act and faced up to 115 years in prison. But during the trial, it was revealed that government officials had broken the law by trying to discredit him. They had illegally wiretapped him and even sent people to secretly break into his psychiatrist's office. Because of the misconduct, the judge dropped all charges in 1973. Ellsberg spent the rest of his life speaking and writing about war, government secrecy, and nuclear weapons. He supported other whistleblowers like Edward Snowden and Chelsea Manning, and he became a symbol of someone who took great personal risk to tell the public the truth. Daniel Ellsberg passed away in 2023 at age 92. He is generally remembered as one of the most important whistleblowers in American history. Mark Felt was a top official at the FBI during the early 1970s. He became known as the secret source behind the name Deep Throat, the person who gave inside information about the Watergate scandal to reporters from the Washington Post. At the time, Felt was the associate director of the FBI, the second highest position in the agency. When 5 men were caught breaking into the Democratic Party headquarters at the Watergate building in 1972, it seemed like a small case, but Felt knew there was more to the story. Behind the scenes, he met secretly with reporters Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein. Using notes, signs, and late-night parking garage meetings, Felt gave them the tips and clues that helped expose a larger plot involving the White House. The information led to the discovery that people working for President Richard Nixon were trying to spy on political opponents and cover it up. The scandal grew until Nixon resigned in 1974, the first and only U.S. president to do so. For over 30 years, no one knew who Deep Throat was. People guessed, but Mark Felt's name didn't come out until 2005, when he publicly confirmed it. He said he felt the White House was interfering with the FBI and that he had a duty to protect the law. Unlike later whistleblowers, Felt was never charged with a crime. He passed away in 2008 at the age of 95. Mark Felt's secret role in uncovering Watergate made him one of the most famous whistleblowers in U.S. history, even if people didn't know his name for decades. Frances Haugen used to work at Facebook. In 2021, she made headlines around the world when she shared thousands of internal documents showing how the company knew its platform could cause harm, but didn't fix the problems. Haugen was a product manager on Facebook's civic integrity team. She worked on ways to keep users safe and stop the spread of false or harmful information. But she said that after the 2020 US election, the company shut down that team. She believed that choice led to more harmful content spreading online. The documents she shared showed that Facebook's own research had found serious issues. For example, Instagram, which is also owned by Facebook, made body image problems worse for some teenage girls. Other reports showed that the company's systems were pushing people toward more extreme views because that got more clicks and kept people online longer. Haugen said Facebook chose profits over safety. She believed the public needed to know what was happening inside the company. So she gave the documents to the US government and major newspapers like the Wall Street Journal. This became known as the Facebook Files. She also testified before the US Congress, saying that Facebook could make changes to protect users, but wasn't doing enough. Her testimony got attention from lawmakers in the US and Europe. Facebook denied many of her claims. Frances Haugen's actions started new talks about how social media affects kids, politics, and mental health. She brought forward information that most people had never seen and gave a rare look inside one of the most powerful companies on the internet. Jeffrey Wigand was a high-level scientist at a major tobacco company called Brown & Williamson. In the early 1990s, he became one of the first insiders to speak out about how cigarette companies were hiding the truth. He revealed that they knew nicotine was addictive and that they were changing the chemicals in cigarettes to make people want to smoke more. Wigand had worked as the head of research and development. While there, he learned that the company was adding dangerous chemicals, like ammonia, to make nicotine hit the brain faster. He also saw that the company was not sharing this information with the public, even when it involved health risks. In 1996, Wigand did something few people in his position had ever done. He went on the news show 60 Minutes and told the world he had seen the inside of the tobacco industry. He explained how companies had studied addiction, changed ingredients, and even targeted younger people with marketing, all while saying publicly that smoking wasn't harmful. After the interview, the tobacco industry fought back hard. Wigand faced lawsuits, threats, and efforts to damage his reputation. But documents from inside the companies backed up his story. In 1998, tobacco companies agreed to a massive legal settlement with U.S. states. They paid billions of dollars and agreed to stop advertising to kids. This was partly because of the information Wigand made public. His story was later told in the movie The Insider, where he was played by actor Russell Crowe. Today, Jeffrey Wigand is remembered as a key whistleblower who helped change the way people think about tobacco. His actions showed how one person's truth-telling can challenge even the most powerful industries. Reality Winner was a U.S. Air Force veteran and language expert who worked as a translator. In 2017, while working as a contractor for the National Security Agency, NSA, she printed out a secret report about the 2016 U.S. election. The report said that Russian military hackers tried to get into voting systems in the U.S. just before the election. Winner believed that people had the right to know this information. She mailed the document to a news outlet called The Intercept. After the story was published, the document had signs that pointed back to her. The FBI came to her house in Georgia and arrested her in June 2017. She was charged under the Espionage Act, and in 2018, Winner pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 5 years and 3 months in prison, the longest sentence ever given in the U.S. for sharing information with the media. Karen Silkwood was a lab technician who worked at a nuclear fuel plant in Oklahoma during the 1970s. The plant was owned by Kerr McGee, and it made fuel rods using plutonium, a very dangerous and radioactive material. Karen was also part of the workers' union, and she started raising concerns about safety problems inside the plant. She said workers were being exposed to radiation, equipment wasn't working right, and important rules were being ignored. Karen gave her complaints to the Atomic Energy Commission, which oversaw nuclear safety in the U.S. She also collected documents to back up her claims. Then something strange happened. Karen herself was contaminated with radiation, even though she followed safety rules. Tests showed it was in her body, her apartment, and even in her car. On November 13, 1974, Karen got into her car to drive to a meeting with a reporter from the New York Times. She said she was bringing documents to prove what was going on at the plant. But she never made it. Her car was found crashed on the side of the road. She had lost her life in the accident, and the documents she said she was carrying were never found. Some believe that Karen might have been forced off the road to stop her from speaking out. Her case was never fully solved. After her passing, her family sued Kiriakou. The case brought national attention to nuclear safety. In the end, the company paid a large settlement, though it did not admit wrongdoing. Mordechai Vanunu was a technician at a secret nuclear facility in Israel. In the early 1980s, he worked at Dimona, a plant where Israel was believed to be making nuclear weapons. The Israeli government had never publicly admitted to having these weapons, but Vanunu saw things that made him believe they were real, and that the world needed to know. In 1986, after leaving his job, Vanunu traveled to the United Kingdom. He met with journalists from the Sunday Times and shared photos and information he had secretly taken inside the facility. According to experts, the material he gave showed that Israel had built over 100 nuclear warheads, making it one of the largest undeclared nuclear powers in the world. Before the study could be published, Vanunu was tricked by an undercover agent and taken to Italy. There, Israeli agents secretly brought him back to Israel. He was charged with sharing national defense secrets and sentenced to 18 years in prison, most of it spent in isolation. Vanunu was released in 2004, but he wasn't allowed to leave Israel or speak with foreign journalists. He has been arrested several times since for breaking these rules. He says he no longer has any secret information and just wants to live a normal life. His critics say he broke his country's trust and gave away sensitive information that could harm national security. Today, Mordechai Vanunu remains in Israel. Peter Buxtun was a public health worker who helped expose one of the most troubling medical studies in U.S. history, the Tuskegee syphilis study. This study began in 1932 and was run by the U.S. Public Health Service. It followed 600 black men in Tuskegee, Alabama. Some of the men had syphilis, a serious illness, and researchers wanted to study how the disease progressed without treatment. The biggest problem was that the men were never told they had syphilis. They were told that they were being treated for bad blood, a vague term used at the time. Even after penicillin became the standard cure in the 1940s, the men were not given the medicine. Doctors watched the illness get worse just to study the effects. The study lasted for 40 years. Peter Buxtun found out about the study in the 1960s when he worked as a disease interviewer for the Public Health Service. He was shocked. He reported his concerns to his supervisors, but nothing changed. After years of trying to stop it from the inside, he finally gave the information to the press in 1972. That year, the New York Times and the Washington Star published stories about the study. The public was outraged. The U.S. government shut it down soon after. In 1973, a lawsuit was filed, and the government paid a settlement to the survivors and their families. In 1997, President Bill Clinton publicly apologized to the men and their families for what had been done to them. Peter Buxton's actions helped end a study that never should have happened. By speaking out, he brought attention to medical ethics and human rights even in science and health. John Kiriakou is a former CIA officer who became known for revealing the U.S. government's use of harsh interrogation methods after the 9/11 attacks. In 2007, during a TV interview, Kiriakou confirmed for the first time that the CIA had used water-based interrogation, a method many considered a form of mistreatment, on suspected terrorists. He also said he believed the method worked, but that it was wrong and should not be used. The interview drew a lot of attention because, at the time, the U.S. government had not officially admitted using those techniques. Kiriakou's comments helped start a national conversation about how the U.S. was treating detainees in secret prisons overseas. In 2012, Kiriakou was charged, not for talking about the methods themselves, but for giving a journalist the name of an undercover CIA officer. He said he didn't mean to reveal anyone's identity, but he accepted a plea deal. He was sentenced to 30 months in prison under the Espionage Act. Kiriakou served his time and was released in 2015. Since then, he has spoken publicly about whistleblower rights and government transparency. He wrote books and has said he regrets how the situation played out, but not the decision to speak out about what was happening inside the CIA. John Kiriakou's case is important because it was one of the first times a CIA officer went to prison for revealing information. Not about spying, but about government actions that many people thought the public had a right to know. Thank you for checking out the video and watching till the end. If you've made it this far, I am hoping you liked it, so please make it official and give us a like. It really helps the channel. And subscribe to get notified about more videos like this one in the future. Thanks again. See you next time.